Welcome to Spring with Seasons Leadership Podcast, where we are awakening to new energy, creativity, and the opportunity to elevate our thinking. Throughout the season, we will continue to bring you actionable advice to inspire you to explore new possibilities, clarify your vision, and start your new plan to improve your leadership and life today. Thank you for joining me, Susan Ireland, and my co-host, Debbie Collard. As certified leadership coaches and co-founders of Seasons Leadership, we share a vision to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard, which drives us to partner with teams, individuals, and organizations to increase and accelerate leadership excellence, a specific skill that helps leaders successfully achieve high levels of performance. Learn more at seasonsleadership.com. You've experienced plenty of examples of mediocre or even bad leadership. Join us in making positive leadership the norm rather than the exception. By listening and engaging in the discussions featured on this podcast, you help us bring leadership excellence to the world. Thank you for joining us. And today we have Kimberly Adams Tremper. Kimberly is an artist, author, art instructor, business owner, and executive leader. Switching between the art room and the boardroom is a natural for seasoned leader Kimberly Adams Tremper. In addition to being an artist, she has worked in leadership positions in corporate retail for over 30 years. Her professional art is unique, using only her fingertips to create. This art has been displayed in galleries for over 9 years. Through her creative work, she is a mentor to students and emerging artists. In the corporate world, she focuses on helping leaders be better leaders and teams collaborate to optimize results. Recently diagnosed with a brain tumor, Kimberly has relied on her positive mindset to continue to overcome her toughest hardships. Daily, she pursues her passions to help others develop skill sets that will help them in all aspects of their life and career. Kimberly currently sits on the board of advisors for the Tombolo Institute for Bellevue College. Canvas reproductions of her work are also available on iCanvas.com. For more information about Kimberly, her classes, and her available works, visit artbykimberlyadams.com. Now, I have had the privilege to know Kimberly for almost 10 years now, first as my art teacher and now as my dear, dear friend. We are grateful to have her join us on our first podcast guest for this season, where we are focusing on leadership excellence. Kimberly embodies leadership excellence on so many levels. She's multidimensional, able to shine and perform with excellence in the boardroom, in the office with direct reports, with customers, in the art gallery as artist and business owner. Her solution-minded mindset and tenacity is inspiring. She continues to recreate herself through curiosity and continuous learning and that positive attitude. Welcome, Kimberly.
Welcome, Kimberly.
Well, thank you both, Debbie and Susan, for having me today.
We're excited to have this conversation with you today. I haven't known you quite as long as Susan, only 3 years, but you are still an inspiration to me with all the myriad of things that you're involved in. You're very multidimensional, and it comes across in this recent health issue that you've had. Comes across your leadership style in that too. So I hope that we're going to get into that and talk a little bit about it today.
I think it's my curiosity that keeps it adventurous.
It is.
Curiosity is a good thing.
It is. Kimberly, can you start off by talking about what you think leadership is?
I think leadership is really just the guidance of helping others get to where they need to be. Because a lot of times leaders think, oh, I need them to be just like me. And I actually do not think that's the case. It's about understanding who you're working with on your team, understanding their individual strengths, and then helping them get to the point where they need to be.
Yeah. I really believe, and I see in you, an authenticity. You are truly yourself, no matter where you are, right? Either you're in the boardroom or you're teaching art, you are authentically yourself, which I think is powerful. I know it's powerful for a leader because it's attractive in a way, is that I want to follow you.
Well, thank you for that. I do think the transition it was a transition. And I think a lot of times when we start in our careers, we don't, we try to mimic what we see around us. And I think that, with my tenure in corporate retail, that's where I started. I wanted to dress, look, mimic those leaders around me, because I felt like that's what I need to do to be successful. And it wasn't until I grew up not grew up in age wise, but grew up in that retail world. And you start to understand that we all can't be the same. We really have to start to identify what is unique about us. And when I started leaning into that and understanding there isn't a different Kimberly in the art world, there isn't a different Kimberly in the work world. It's all the same human. I just need to embrace that. And what separates me is actually my strength. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it didn't start off that way. It was a journey in learning that about myself. And it's fascinating. And I can tell you, I've nicknamed it my superpower. Everyone has their superpower. And it's like identifying what your superpower is kind of the journey. And it's, maybe there's some similarities to someone else's superpower, but if you really dig deep, peel back the onion and start to reflect on what you bring as an individual to the team, is when you really start to understand, your purpose and your point on being there.
Kimberly, you said you didn't start off knowing that. And so could you describe a little bit for us what your journey to identifying your superpower looked like?
Fake it till you know it. I mean, to be honest, that's exactly what I did. I remember the very first time I got a managerial role, and I didn't interview for that role. I interviewed for, I think it's an assistant manager, and I ended up getting the lead role. And I was surprised, but I did not let anybody know that that was a surprise to me. I remember going to work thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. But when I got there, I had such confidence that it's like, all right, guys, we're going to do this. And so I think that's about most things. I think oftentimes we put obstacles in front of ourselves. Maybe a job we're afraid to join, or maybe we don't think we're good enough for it, that imposter syndrome. There's a lot of different categories that you find, or obstacles that you put in front of you. But to be honest, sometimes you just have to have confidence in self. And, as a human beings, we're equipped with solving. We're equipped with this great strength of problem solving. And if we put ourselves in situations that we might not be that comfortable with or that knowledgeable about, we surprise ourselves sometimes, because then we come out of that a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, and gaining that experiences. And going back to your point on what leadership is, that to me is a big part of leadership too. It's about having experiences and then teaching those experiences with others, because we can be in the same room as someone else, but two people have different perspectives on the same subject. And so it's so fascinating to hear what each person's perspectives are. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. It's just different. And that's where I feel like we have an opportunity to contribute. I want to hear people's perspectives, and I'd like to share mine.
It sounds like where the curiosity maybe comes in for you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a beacon of curiosity.
Yeah, that might be your superpower, right?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
A beacon of curiosity. It sounds like it could be a bumper sticker, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, because what you're saying here is your curiosity opens you to other people's perspectives. So you hear more, right? So you hear more options, that gives you more possibility. But also, I think your curiosity also is an inviting, welcoming attitude to have. So people are probably, I know I am, probably willing to give you their perspectives.
Well, so on that point, and I think we'll probably talk about this a little bit more. In life, we have those that we view as mentors, right? We view these people as mentors and people that we're around. So in my life, I have mentors in the work. I have mentors in my fine art. I have mentors in life, friendships. And so there was a gentleman, John Jenkins, that I reached out to in the corporate world. I was fascinated with his growth, right? And I reached out to him and I asked him, just some basic questions. And he gave some advice, and I thought it was so smart. He said, always be curious, always be interviewing. And so, again, pulling back that onion and looking at with self, it's like, I feel like I've always been a very curious person. But I think when you are always curious, you learn so much about the people around you. And it's quite fast. Like I said, you yourself become stronger because of it. And if you approach that, whether it's in art or if it's in the corporate world, I think Susan's nodding her head, yes, because I do the same thing with the art world. It's like just curious on how someone, shows up that day and how they're painting or what are their, it might be different from mine, but that's okay. I'm curious on why they're doing that and how can I help encourage them. So I just thought I'd share that because I thought that was, always be curious. That is a good tip to share. And especially you're in a world that you're not that familiar with, being curious can help you, can be your best friend.
Yeah.
Well, that was great advice you got from that mentor, because when we're curious, what happens is we're opening ourselves up. We're being receptive to other things around us instead of just saying, oh, I've got this figured out, I'm going to go this direction. And so we open up and we allow many more things to come into our consciousness. And it can be just such a powerful tool, especially when you're feeling stuck. If someone's feeling stuck somewhere, it's just like, I find if you be curious about things around you and just let your curiosity drive where you're looking, what you're seeing, what you're taking in, then it'll help you get unstuck in a lot of cases.
That's funny that you're saying that. I'm looking Unstuck, the book I'm reading right now, Unstuck. It's by Colin House. I actually got to meet him. It's pretty interesting. It talks about risk versus reward, but talks about becoming unstuck, because we do that to ourselves. Why do we do that? Why do we get stuck in the mud and be afraid of moving forward? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Well, what's the answer? Do you have the answer to that? Why do
I'm still reading the book, but I can give you my answer.
Good. Give us your answer.
So for me, I think we get stuck because, we all have these knee-jerk reactions, whatever it is. And so Deb, you asked me how did I get from point A to point B? It's the beginning. I used to get stuck. I used to be afraid. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the self-doubt, self-sabotage, you name it. There's all kinds of things that can prevent you from moving forward. But I think through my lifetime, it's not easy. It's not easy for a lot of people. I've been a single mom. I've been struggling, paycheck to paycheck, what bill Tetris is what I used to call it. I think we've all gone through different phases in life. Just that journey in itself, it's scary. But I learned that I could do one of two things. I can spend my energy stressing out on the things that I can't control, or I could spend my energy on things I can. And that was kind of the seed of my problem solving. And then as I got older and as more things kept happening, because that's what happens, right? You overcome one thing in life, something else comes your way. And then maybe 2 or 3 things, or maybe 5 things happen at once. But what you end up doing, or my tip is, the minute I get this thing thrown on my plate, like my brain tumor, that was a surprise to me. It's not something that I wanted. The first thing that I did is, yes, you could be afraid, you can be worried, you can think of all these negative things, but I immediately went into the seek to understand mindset. Because for me, worrying about this is not going to help me at all. But being curious about it and trying to find another human being on this planet that has gone through what I've gone through, those things are going to help me get through that. And it's like where I choose to put my energy. And so that's a skill that you learn over life. And that's what I tell people. That's how I get unstuck, is I choose where I put my energy. I have all those other feelings. I just choose not to put energy there. I move past them pretty quick, and then immediately get to somewhere where I feel like I'm more productive. So how about you? How do you guys get unstuck?
Mine looks very much the same. And it's what I also share with all my coaching clients is focus on the things, put your energy on the things that you can do something about, either control or influence.
Yeah.
If you can't either control or influence it, then why are you wasting your time? Because it's taking up your energy and going to make you more frustrated because you can't control it and you're just going to be spinning. So mine looks very much the same. Susan, what about you?
Well, I think mine is a little bit different, and I'm really so inspired by you two. I think for me is I start reaching out to people. So I don't know, I don't know what I don't know, I guess. And I don't even know what I can control and what I can't control. But if I start reaching out to people and asking them, what do you think? It's I get different ideas, and even if am not like convinced that like somebody else's idea might work, just doing something sometimes can start the momentum of, then the unstuckness starts to happen. But sometimes it takes a while.
Susan, what I just got out of what you just said was that you make yourself curious.
That's
ask other people.
I was gonna say, I'm like, you put your energy into being curious.
Yeah.
Right.
Your energy into something very productive, which
Yeah.
is, if you like, again, don't you find that some things are like, it's like an onion, right? We see, here's the certain, but you start peeling back the layers,
Yeah.
you start peeling back, and then there's a lot of commonality in that core.
Yeah, it is. Kimberly, I know you've got so many stories and you've had lots of challenges in your life, but one story that I think is really interesting, and that is your decision at some point, probably about 10 years ago, to leave corporate and become a full-time artist. I mean, that is a huge change. And how did you do that?
Yeah, well, I like to always preface this story because with humor, because where I was good at my job, my career, I was getting promotions, I wasn't passionate about it. And so where I start with humor is, I'm financially responsible. I have 2 children, my husband, I'm financially responsible. We share that. I remember the day that I quit my corporate career and told my husband, I'm going to be a finger painter. And I remember his face. He's like, you're going to do what? But he had that trust in me. And again, it's that confidence when I walk in the room, fake it till you know it. I had an opportunity to be around another artist that's a friend of mine. And I was actually on a corporate trip in New York, and I happened to stay at her art studio. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing her living the life of an artist. It was something that I always dreamed about doing, what I went to school for, what I was passionate about as a young child. I just visioned myself being an artist. But then things happen. You start working, and then you start getting attached to that paycheck, and that dream of what you wanted gets further and further apart from what you actually are doing. And I'm sitting in reality with this person that's living my dream. So I had the plane ride from New York to Seattle to think about that. And that's where I started thinking, why can't I? I have at that point in time, I had over 23 years in leadership experience in corporate retail. I knew business. I knew how to start emerging brands. I knew a lot about that. And so why am I not doing this? And so I went back to work on Monday and made the decision on Wednesday to be a finger painter. And I did. I gave myself 1 year, and I said, if I can't figure this out with 1 year, I'll go back. And because I had money, saved up, it just wasn't, but I was like, I'm going to just do this. And I approached it like a business. I've given this advice to others, and I think this is where the more people you talk to, you kind of cherry pick different things. So for me, every Monday, just like I would in my corporate world, every Monday was my admin Monday.
Yeah.
I did research. I worked on my website. I did things from a business standpoint, my P&L, these type of things. I scheduled paint days, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays were my paint days. Then you schedule in, networking. So I approached it very much like a business and building a brand. And I was a student. I was super curious. If whether you're going to be an artist or other things in life, I think you can approach it the same way. I wanted to be around other people who are emerging artists, and I want to learn from them. So one of the things that I did was I joined a local art gallery that is an artist-owned gallery. A lot of communities have them. Some are around better than others. The one that I joined particularly was it had been established for over 20 years, and it was very professionally run. You had a jury to get into it. So yeah, I joined them shortly after, and I was emerged with 40 other artists, some that were just starting, some that had been artists for 40 years, and I was all of a sudden in this community. And so it branched, and then very quickly that my brand, like understanding my art and accepting my art, there's so much I could talk about that and actually eventually joined the board of that gallery because I was so passionate about what they do and how they've helped others launch their career. But yeah, it was a decision on an airplane, and a little shot in the dark and a lot of confidence and a lot of curiosity. And here I am 9 years later. I still am a professional artist. I've written books, and I've had an opportunity to teach students like Susan, and I still paint. But I also still enjoy my corporate career. I actually went back to be in the corporate world as well, because when you're an artist, it's a very lonely, you get pretty quiet in the studio painting, unless you're talking to the painting or your pets. I'm a very social person, so I enjoyed being around people and eventually do both. And I think that's why you always say multi-dimensional.
Yes.
I have a passion for both. I do a lot in the corporate world, and I still do a lot in the fine art world.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating story. We're going to take a quick break for a moment and come right back to that. So stick with us. We invite you to join us for our first live event with the Seasons Leadership Patreon community. We launched the Patreon site about 6 months ago as a way to connect with leaders at all levels and in all different environments, looking to improve their leadership skills and to support our mission to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard. We're going to go live with our Patreon founders and Gold community at 5 p.m. Pacific time on April 20th. So that's coming up here really quickly.
Yeah, so if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't miss the opportunity to join our live discussion. We will be talking about how to shift your perspective in times of stress, self-care, and the responsibility all leaders have to take care of themselves because they impact so many. We're looking forward to connecting with our community on this important and timely topic to share tips and perspectives. You are not alone in this overwhelmed feeling, and together we can support each other.
So to join, sign up at patreon.com/seasonsleadership at our Gold membership level. In addition to joining our quarterly live discussions, patrons at this level also get access to the full library of the Lessons in Leadership column, featuring exclusive advice from our resident seasoned leader, Dr. David Spong, who is a 2-time Baldrige Award-winning leader. You'll also receive access to our Leadership Element series, which focuses on a different aspect of leadership excellence once each month. We just published the latest element on tiny practices, a truly leadership changing exercise that you can start implementing today. So sign up for a Gold Patreon before the first live event on April 20th. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/seasonsleadership. We hope to see you there. Now back to Kimberly's fascinating story. I hated to break it at that point, but so Kimberly, you just told us that you ended up going back to corporate because you were a bit lonely in the art world, and you were doing both things then. So how did that work for you as a leader, being both in the corporate world and an artist?
Well, life can influence us in a lot of different ways. While I was an art teacher, I would hear a lot of my students say, "Oh, I always wanted to be an artist." It's like, well, what stopped you? And you hear things, "Oh, I'm not that good at it." Or you hear things, I can't, I'm a mom, or, I have kids, I have my career, I have my job. You hear all these obstacles that people throw out. And having done both, I would share, it's like, well, you can't do both. You can be a painter and a career. You can do both. And just people didn't think it was possible. And so that was one of the nudges, because towards I guess it was about 4 or 5 years in being a full-time artist, that curiosity and that need to be around people. As I mentioned, I joined the board of directors for the gallery. I actually volunteered probably 50 hours a week. I was constantly involved in some kind of
That's a lot.
nonprofit. Yes, I was busy, because that's where I draw my energy from, is being around those. And so I started thinking, if I have this much time to devote to volunteering, I could probably devote this time to working and still maintaining my art. And so I did. I interviewed with a few people, but I had recruited from this company, and I joined them. And it was tough at the beginning, Debbie. It was hard, and you have these moments. I think I even sat down with Susan at one point and was like, man, this is really going to be tough, to be able to carry both. But that's where I was challenged. I was challenged that, that moment that you feel like you're going to quit, that's what you need to write about. That's what you need to share. And so I remember 3 months in, I thought I was going to throw in the towel and just focus on one and not both. But then I really started thinking, what's making it hard? And what was making it hard is I wasn't prioritizing things well enough. And so I think sometimes we can sit back and look and reorganize our day. And so I just had to restructure what my weeks looked like. Because I also didn't want to overwork myself. I didn't want to burn on both ends. I wanted to have a healthy balance. And so I had to relook at that. And basically, I looked at each thing that I was doing with the return on investment. Was I gaining anything from it? Was it necessary? And if it wasn't, I removed it. So I did pull myself back from a lot of things so I can focus on the few. And so then I lived this very healthy balance between being an artist and working in this corporate world, because you're not in this corporate world 24/7. And, same thing with my art. I can't produce art all day long. It's just understanding when you're the most productive in which setting. And so I found, for example, writing books. When I write, my writing hours are 5 a.m. to about 8 o'clock in the morning. I have this burst of creative writing energy. For whatever reason, I do so well. And then it just stops. And so then that's perfect time for me to start checking reporting and going my corporate. And I would go in and, 7 o'clock, I'd be doing that. And then with my art, but I would have a full day of analyzing reports, meetings, just the things that go with your 9-to-5 job. I would get, everyone gets tired at the end of the day. But for me, that's when it would be like, okay, I'm ready to do something creative. And I would go in my studio and start painting. And what I end up finding is this flow. I could write early in the morning. Then I can do what I call my left brain, where I did a lot of this analytical type work, career type stuff. And then I would flip over to this creative side of my brain in the evening. And it was so relaxing. And I had so much energy. And I didn't feel like I was missing out on things. I still had time to, be a wife, be a mom, spend time with my friends. It's just understanding your healthy balance. So I know that's a big, long-winded answer, but
no, that's great. That's wonderful.
This is, I think, what is so inspiring about you, Kimberly, is because we talk about this. We talk about being balanced, but most people, me included, don't actually do it. And you, with your curiosity and tenacity, you you make your mind up and you are going to do it. You made your mind up, you were going to quit your job and become a full-time artist for a year. And then you have discipline to actually make it happen. It's not like you just wish it away, you actually do it. And so your tips are very helpful. Prioritize, you have a good operating rhythm. Debbie and I talk about operating rhythm as one of a core leadership element. It's a skill to be able to develop. It's not hard, but you just have to do it. Yeah, so it's inspiring.
And I've gotten, speaking of inspiring, I've been listening to you throughout this, and I've got 4 C words that keep popping up for me.
Okay.
So those 4 C words are curiosity, community, challenge, and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those have been mentioned several times. And so it sounds like those are maybe some of the ingredients, Kimberly, to your superpower.
I actually like that. I think that the creative and curiosity kind of go hand in hand. And I think I love challenges. I seek them out. I'm no longer afraid of them. That curiosity pulls me in. And then you have, I just think, I think that is probably some very good ingredients that are lined up in there.
Yeah,
So,
and the community of going back into the corporate world so you could be around people, and the art organization that you joined for community. So yeah, those were some inspiring words out of that.
Yeah.
Kimberly, we've just pointed out a couple of the tips that you've been giving people, but if a leader came up to you today and said, or our listeners wanted to know, what is 1 or 2 things that you would give them as actionable tips that they can start doing right now today?
well, I think we mentioned always be curious, always be learning. I think regardless of how long you've been in a field, we have an opportunity to always be the student. And so if I was to give a tip to somebody, it would be a student in a subject you're not familiar with. Go on and listen to a podcast, read a book, take a course. Last year, I guess it was 2 years now, I took a course from Harvard Business School online about sustainable business. I knew little about this subject. I wanted to learn more. So I took a deep dive into it, and it was one of the best things that I've ever taken. I learned so much from that. More recently, I'm an oil painter. That medium, for those that are artists, that medium, I'm very familiar with it. I would always joke in my classes, watercolor, I have no idea what watercolor, I have no idea. So as I've been recovering, I didn't have the option to stand in front of a canvas for a long period of time. So I needed to work on my hand and eye coordination. So what did I do? I pulled out watercolor and I started 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. Every day I'd try to do a little bit of watercolor. And I always joked about how hard that medium was, but it's like, well, let's give it a try. And now I'm teaching people how to use watercolor. So funny how that worked. But so that'd be my tip is challenge yourself. There's a lot of different things at our fingertips to help us become more knowledgeable about a subject. Put yourself in a subject you don't know that much about and learn about it.
That's fantastic advice. Susan, we got time for one more question. You want to go?
Oh, it's so hard. Because Kimberly, what's also impressing me about this is that it feels like your whole life has been preparing yourself. If you knew you were going to get this brain tumor, you were like situated in a way with the mindset, the tenacity, the curiosity that helps you deal with this. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, again, that news is always like, what? I have a brain tumor. That's pretty terrifying. But again, over my course of life, I have had a lot of things happen that I didn't really want to have happen in my life. And I've just put my energy on what I can do to be, solution minded. So when I found out a brain tumor, for some reason, I was never afraid. I don't know why. I think because my symptoms were so mild that I thought, if this is what it feels like to have a brain tumor, I got this. But obviously things, there's prognosis. Mine is inoperable. A portion of it is, as you can see, I have some side effects that I'm recovering from. So there are some things that happen from it, but I think my mindset of to seek to understand is where I put my energy. At that point in time, I wasn't really on social media that often, but I needed to meet another human that had a tumor where I had mine, and I needed to visually see another person living a life with these symptoms. And at the time, I couldn't find anybody. That's why I've been so passionate about putting things out on social media, because I want to be that trailblazer for someone who has something like mine, so they can log on the internet, like search like I did, and find a human out there and see that, I actually am living a life. I actually am able to function. It is hard at times, but you can overcome it and just give it time. All the things that I learned from this, I like to share that with others, but it really was a seek to understand mindset and distractions. Anytime I start to get negative or I walk outside, go on a walk, or I go do something to get my mind off of it, because I felt like that was a healthier state of mind than dwelling on something that I couldn't control. And so to think that, all of my life, hiccups up and down led me to how I was going to manage a brain tumor. It's interesting because at some point in time, we all have something, right? We all have something that we have to deal with. This happens to be my something. And so we have to choose how we approach it. And I've just chosen to approach it like, okay, this is what I got. And so how can I live my life with what I have and keep doing the things that I enjoyed? And I'm still doing that. I'm not currently working in the corporate world because I still have things that I'm recovering from, but eventually I'll get there. I got to just recently, it's been almost 7 months since my craniotomy, and I'm painting. I can actually paint for longer periods of time. So it's like my tolerance level is starting to go back up. So things come back, but yeah, it's just being patient with myself, being curious. I know we keep saying that word. Maybe the community is extremely important, because putting yourself around other people that are in that same type of mindset is healthy. And to have humor is the best medicine. I wake up all the time and I laugh, like, look at my face. But when we did New Year's Eve, I told my husband, I came around the corner, at that time I wasn't smiling yet, and I was like, I'm coming in hot, because it's just funny how you look at things and think, I would have never thought this would happen. But it is kind of funny in a way, and you look at it, and eventually it'll all go away.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring how you've been able to deal with this, even though as Susan pointed out, probably everything, the way you've lived your life and everything you've been experiencing has helped prepare you for that. Still, I don't know that one can ever be prepared for that type of a diagnosis, but you were able to come through that and well on the road to recovery. And I just am so inspired by how you're dealing with it and approaching it. And I hope that if I were to get a diagnosis like that, I would be able to do it with half the grace and tenacity that you've been able to, Kimberly.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I know. And you are, I mean, also by putting yourself out there and being that other person for the next person who has this, that they can go find you is very generous. You're generous with your talents and your experiences, and really thank you for sharing with us on this podcast.
Well, I think that's our purpose in life, right? To understand life's experiences, go through life experiences, and then share what we've learned with others. That's the whole reason why we're here. And so every time I have an experience, my next step is to share with others what I've learned from that experience.
Thank you.
That is a fantastic purpose and a fantastic close to our podcast today. Sad a little bit that it has to end, but we'll have you back again for another conversation, Kimberly. So thank you, listeners, for joining us today for the Seasons Leadership Podcast. We hope you're able to take these words of excellence and wisdom with you from Kimberly on your own leadership journey. Remember, no matter what level or role you are, you can always become more than you are today. And be curious. That's one thing we heard today. And the world needs you. When you fulfill your unique purpose, you strengthen organizations and communities in which you live and work. Thank you for being part of our positive leadership change, and join us in making excellent leadership the worldwide standard by subscribing to our community on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/seasons leadership to become a member and join the conversation. We'd love to connect with you as we build our own community of excellent leaders. And make sure you tune in next time for a new episode on the Seasons Leadership Podcast. Until then, we're sending positive vibes for new energy, creativity, and an opportunity to elevate your thinking during this season of spring.